Hello, this is Jock and coach of the San Francisco Cinderace. Today I wanted to put together a video about wall breakers because I've noticed a lot of teams in the league are having trouble breaking through walls. That it seems to be a common theme that a lot of teams are struggling when they get put up against these kind of Pokemon. So I'm not trying to call out the people that are in these matches. They were just two from this week that had good examples of what I was talking about. So the idea is a wall is a defensive Pokemon that has high defensive stats, low offensive stats, and usually runs lots of status moves to heal itself, to use moves like Toxic or Will-O-Wisp, and then usually other crippling moves, maybe like Stealth Rocks, or even stuff like Nightshade. Basically moves that don't require like actual offensive stats to do good damage. And the idea of a wall breaker is a Pokemon with high offensive stats that usually runs either like a Choice Band or Choice Specs, or maybe it has a boosting move like Swords Dance or Nasty Plot, or even a Pokemon that just has a good matchup against the wall that is able to kill that wall in 1 or 2 turns. So if I show you the example here, the first one is me versus the Mighty Psyducks. You can see that my Umbreon is sticking around pretty nicely, and it's giving his Copperage a hard time. He's not really able to get through it, but if we skip to when he brings in Togekiss, you can see that Choice Specs Togekiss is able to actually break through my Umbreon. It's a good example of a wall breaker because he brought Choice Specs on the Togekiss. Now his trouble was that he didn't bring it in very early and he let my Umbreon do what it wanted to. A big thing with walls is that walls are better the longer you let them stay around. If you're letting walls like Toxic multiple of your Pokemon or do little bits of damage to all of your Pokemon, that is what a wall wants to do. So like I said, you're trying to get through a wall in usually 1 or 2 turns. So the Togekiss with Choice Specs was a very good call to deal with the Umbreon. The only trouble was it came in after the Copperajah had died. If we go to the next example, we have the Boston Bidoofs versus the Huntsville Haunters. Here, the Huntsville Haunters have some trouble breaking through this Porygon 2. They get chipped down a little bit by the Tri-Attack. They're going to try Leech Lifing, and it doesn't do enough to outdamage the Recover. They're going to try Flare Blitzing and take some recoil damage, and that doesn't even do enough to outdamage the Recover. So they're struggling to get through this Porygon 2. They eventually do with a crit from the Excadrill down the line, but it's not an ideal way to do it. So there's a couple things. I have an article from Smogon that's talking all about wall breaking, talks about all the different methods to do it with boosting attackers and choiced attackers and trapping Pokemon and taunt users and trick users and all that sort of stuff. But I put together quickly just a couple of like the easy examples of ways to deal with walls. So like this first one is any Pokemon doesn't need to be Rillaboom with Taunt. A lot of these walls usually are running multiple status moves. Like, for example, my Umbreon in that match was running Wish, Protect, Toxic, and then 1 attack. So had it got taunted, it can only use 1 of its 4 moves. The same with the Porygon. The Porygon that game had Trick Room, Toxic, Recover, and Tri-Attack, only 1 attack. So if you taunt a wall, the wall doesn't get to do much of what it wants. It's a good answer. The next thing would be using the move Trick. If you don't know how Trick works, you switch items with the other Pokemon. So the idea here is you put a Choice Scarf for some choice item. It doesn't have to be a Choice Scarf, as long as it's Specs or Band or something. You put a choice item and you use Trick, so you give the wall a choice item. So for example, if my Umbreon got a Choice Scarf, now it can only use 1 of its moves. If it uses Wish, it's stuck using Wish. It can't do anything else. So you basically cripple the wall that it can't have that flexibility of moves that a lot of walls want to have. It's a good way to stop walls that you might not otherwise. Another way, and this is probably the most universal way in all of Pokemon to deal with a wall, is Toxic. Toxic doubles in damage every turn. It starts out doing 6%, and then 12%, and then 24%, and it starts building up like that. So any Pokemon from Generation 7 back, anything from Generations 1 through 7 learns Toxic. So you are very likely to have something on your team that learns Toxic. The only problem would be Steel or Poison types can't be Toxic, but there aren't a majority of walls that are those types. Most walls aren't those, so you'll be able to use Toxic a lot of times. Another good way would be with boosting moves. Anything on your team that gets, say, like Dragon Dance, Calm Mind, Nasty Plot, Swords Dance, Bulk Up, there's a bunch of them. Anything that boosts your attacking stat, coupled with a strong attack. Like, for this example, Gyarados with a Waterfall, after it gets a Dragon Dance off, can break through a lot of walls. So it's a good idea if you don't want to run one of these other options. You can run a boosting Pokemon, and that can even work on more than just the wall. Like, for example, if this Gyarados got going with a Dragon Dance, it might kill the wall, and it might kill one or two other things. So it's a good example if you want to get a sweep off. And then next we have Choice Sweepers. Choice Band and Choice Specs usually help a Pokemon get higher stats than normal. If you're not familiar, you get a 1.5 boost, which is equivalent to a ×1. So it'd be like using Bulk Up on Conkeldurr, is the same amount of an attack raise, I should say. The same amount of damage as if he got a Bulk Up off. This would help you break through a lot of wall Pokemon, like Umbreon especially because it's weak. And the same goes for special attackers, as if they run Choice Specs, it's equivalent to the special attack boost from a Calm Mind. So it's a good option if you want to run something that you think can one-shot it. And then, like I said, the last big way is if you have something that just has a good matchup in that Pokemon in general. Let's say it's not a wall, but let's say you were trying to wall break my Salazzle, right? My Salazzle's 4 times weak to ground. So if you see, oh hey, their wall's 4 times weak to something, that's probably a good idea to bring in a lot of cases. Like the one that jumps to mind would be on the Jacksonville Jolteon. Their Ferrothorn is Grass Steel, 4 times weak to fire. It's a good matchup if you have a fire type. So that sort of thing. Like if you see, oh, there's an easy type matchup that I can abuse against this wall, that's another good way to counter it. But the big thing with walls is they get scarier the longer you let them stick around. That the toxic and chip damage they'll do over time is how they do their damage. They're not like a Dracovish that's just going to kill you in one shot. They're not like a Salazzle that's going to kill you in 1 or 2 moves. They're going to do their damage slowly, and they're going to recover a lot of health while they're doing it. So you want one of these wall breakers to get through the opposing wall. And now not every team has a wall. Like if we come back here and we look at, it was the LA Lucarios was the example I was using. They don't have a traditional wall. Like Primarina is their best example that has good special defense, but its HP and defense are just okay. So it's sort of a semi-wall, but not great. It's not necessary to run one against every team. If you see they don't have a wall, or you don't think they're going to bring the wall, then you don't need to run a wall breaker. That said, a lot of the teams in the league do. Like if we look at the Boston Bidoofs, you can see Venusaur qualifies as a wall, Bronzong qualifies as a wall. Like a lot of teams have at least one wall on them. Like I would say Lapras is a wall, Venusaur's a wall, Quagsire's a wall. Like if we just pick one, like Nashville Nummels, you can see Aegislash would be a wall, Tangrowth would be a wall based on his stats, Slowbro would be a good wall. Like a lot of teams have one, so it's a good idea to have in mind at least one wall breaking Pokemon a week. And it's very matchup based. Your wall breaker 1 week, like say against Nashville Nummels, you might want a grass wall breaker because it gets past the Slowbro. But then come a week where you play the Jacksonville Jolteons, well now you need something that's a fire type or can deal with the Ferrothorn. So your wall breaker will probably change week to week, but it's a good idea to look at least one per matchup. You should have one of your Pokemon in mind is, okay, this is the Pokemon that's going to deal with their walls and help me get through them. Because if you don't have a plan, it can quickly turn into a problem that the wall is just unkillable. So I apologize if the video was a little rambly or long. I wasn't completely sure how I wanted to do this, but I will have a link in the description to this Smogon article about wall breaking. It's a little outdated. I think it's from the Diamond and Pearl metagame, but the items and moves haven't really changed since that has come out. So there might be a newer one out there if you want to go looking for it, but this one is still very effective. I read through it and it talked about a couple things that I hadn't thought of, like the crafting a lure section here. So I think it's still worth a look through. But yes, thank you for watching, and I hope this helps.